Hola muchachos, buenos días or buenas tardes. Señora Torres here again with another lesson video. Today we're going to be reviewing a little bit more of that verbo decir. And you're going to notice that once you know this conjugation pattern here, you'll be able to do the same with another verb that we'll be talking about today. Because it kind of follows the same conjugation rule in the pattern that decir does, okay? Before I move on to today's activity and a little bit about the lesson that we're going to be covering today, I want to review yesterday's notes. I apologize I didn't have a video, but you guys should have these notes in your notebook from yesterday's lesson. And now that I have you guys here on a video, let me explain and go over those a little bit more with you, okay? So first of all, el verbo decir, as you learned, which means to tell or to say. So anytime you want to talk about people saying or telling something, we'll use a form of the verb decir. As you can tell, this is an IR verb. Let me get my highlighter so you can guys. And this is actually a copy of the picture that I took, so it's not colored. I don't have a colored printer up here, but it is an IR verb. Remember we talked about those infinitive endings? Our infinitive verbs either end in ER, AR, or IR. So that's how you know a verb is in the infinitive. It hasn't been conjugated. So this is an IR verb. And as you know, those different verbs have different conjugation rules. So we're going to look at the verb decir today. What rule do I follow for this type of verb? So let's look at it first. We know our chart looks like this for any verb we conjugate, right? We have our singular side and our plural side. And then we have our first person, second person, and third person forms. So in the yo form, whenever I'm talking about myself, notice how instead of an O that you would probably normally see, you just put a go. So we also call this a go verb sometimes because we have to conjugate that with the go ending. So yo digo, for example. Okay? So you also notice that when I remove the IR, my stem here, we've been learning so far in other verbs, a regular verb, that the stem may stay the same. We just add the ending to that stem. Well, it doesn't apply to this verb because as you learned, decir is a stem changing verb, which means the stem changes. Self-explanatory, right? So instead of DEC, this, my stem now is dis, or in this case di in the yo form because we got to do the digo. But it's a stem changing verb because the stem here changes except in the nosotros form. And I did write that in your notes right here. The stem does not happen. The stem change, does not happen in the nosotros or nosotras form. In that case, it stays as this, okay? But in everything else, it changes to this, okay? So it's a stem changing verb because of that, because the stem changes in everything except for the nosotros form. But it's also an irregular verb because of what I was explaining earlier about the go form. You don't conjugate that with the normal or regular IR endings. You will use the go ending for this. The other times, it does follow. Es, imos, en. Sorry, there I should have included that C in there, right? These. Okay? So again, it's an irregular verb, and it's a stem changing verb. Okay, I want to make sure that you guys, I just wanted to review that information with you guys in person, or, talking to you guys. So now let's look at your textbook. Okay, in your textbook, if you turn to page 254, you have that same information presented to you in the textbook with just a little of an addition that we're going to talk about in just a second. So again, to talk about what someone says, use the verb decir. Again, that's in the infinitive, and I can tell because it has that IR ending. We haven't changed that verb. We haven't conjugated yet. The verb decir means to say or to tell. It just depends on the context that you're going to be using it, okay? it has several irregular forms in the present tense. So right now we're just focusing on the present. We're not using past, future, none of that. In Spanish 1, only worry about the present tense of the verbs, okay? And again, it has several irregular forms, and we saw some of those in our notes from yesterday. So one of those irregular forms that we mentioned is that go form, okay? Instead of the O, you would put the go, yo digo. The other irregular form there is that the stem changes. Instead of des, where you left when you remove the IR, you have dis, okay? Except in the nosotros form. And again, it's noted here. Only the nosotros and vosotros, and again, we don't conjugate with the vosotros, so no need to worry about that. But only in the nosotros forms is the stem regular there, and the endings are regular there. Okay? So because this is an irregular verb, muchachos, this is something that as Spanish language learners, you just have to know and memorize. You have to memorize these conjugations. Again, let me cross that one out a little bit more. You don't have to remember that one. We don't conjugate with the vosotros form. That's used in Spain only. So because of that, we really don't study it. But all the others, work on memorizing them. Yo digo, tú dices, él, ella, or usted dice. Nosotros decimos, again, notice that stem didn't change there. It's not decimos, it's decimos. And ellos, ellas, and ustedes dicen. Okay? So just memorize these, and you guys should be fine. And just remember that it's because it's an irregular in the yo form, and it's because it's a stem changing, except in the nosotros form. Okay. And again, if you guys find this a little confusing, because it can be, I'm going to be honest with you. This is why I want to do 2 days of this, because this is a pretty difficult verb to work with. All of these irregular stem changing verbs are very difficult to work with. So I want to spend some time on this. So if you find yourself a little confused or not understanding, please, by all means, whenever you feel that way, pause the lesson, rewind it, go back to yesterday's lesson, whatever helps you to understand this a little bit better. Like I've said before, and I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing this, I really wish I was there, to make things a little bit more clear to those of you having a little bit of trouble. But unfortunately, this is just a situation we're in at the moment. So whatever you can do for yourself to make it a little bit more clear, I'm doing everything I can. But again, if you need to go back to those lessons or to yesterday's lesson or to your notes, whatever it may be, and then message me if you still have questions. I'm always available to help you guys. All right, so a little addition to this, if you notice towards the bottom of this grammar box, we have a certain phrase that we can use with the verbo decir, okay? So you note that decir que, if I add the word que to a form of decir, it means to say that. So basically, que means that in this case. So just remember that. Que, in this case, means that. You may remember that que means what when we're talking about questions and interrogatives maybe before I came in to teach you guys. You may be remembering that que means what. But in this instance, in this phrase, it means that. Decir que, to say that. Decir means to say. Well, que just means that. To say that. So let's look at an example. Sofía says, yo digo que el mercado tiene las cosas más bonitas. So first, let's notice how the verbo was conjugated. The verbo is decir, but why did we have to change that verb? Why did I go from decir to digo? You should be saying that because my subject pronoun is yo. Remember, in the yo form, whenever I'm talking about myself, I have to use the digo form. So yo digo que, now that I added that que there, remember, that means to say that. So if I were to translate yo digo que, it means I say that. Well, let's see what Sofía says. Yo digo que el mercado tiene las cosas más bonitas. You'll notice a few words from our vocabulario this chapter. They should be familiar to you since we've done them the last couple of classes when we learned about vocabulario. El mercado is the market. The verbo tiene. We're going to talk about that in just a second in the next activity. This shouldn't be new to you, right? This should be review from a couple weeks ago, talking about the verbo tener. This is a conjugation of that verbo tener. Tiene las cosas más bonitas. I say that the market has the prettiest, well, in this case, the prettiest things. The market has the prettiest things. So now let's do an example using kind of this format in which we'll be able to say what somebody says about something. Okay? So in that same page, muchachos, let's look at actividad 6. Activity 6. We're going to complete this in your notebooks. We're going to do activity 6 in your notebook, so have that handy. And then activity 7 on a Google Classroom document, which I'll explain in just a second. Okay? So, in activity 6, before we get to that, let me have you guys do the format in your notebook so you guys can follow along with me a little bit better. Okay? So the title of our page here in your notebook, and please make sure you have a Spanish notebook dedicated to this class so you can make sure you have all these notes in one place. Okay? Our lesson title is El Verbo Decir. That's the word we're talking about today. The next title, Actividad 6, página 254, page 254, activity 6. And actually, there's only 5 questions of those, so just number it 1 through 5. 1 through 5. And then actividad 7, página 254, same page, activity 7. And just make a little note for yourself here that this was done in Google Classroom. So if you ever need to go back and review this information, you know that you need to go back to the Google Classroom activity, El Verbo Decir. Okay? Just a little reminder for yourself. Now notice that I added some notes at the top of this page. You may be asking why. These we're actually going to leave for activity 7. So ignore these for just a second. I do want you guys to copy this in there. Now remember, if you need to pause to write, please do that and you can come back when you're ready. Okay? But I do want to attach this tener conjugation as a reminder. In case you need it, we're going to be using verbs or forms of the verb tener here in actividad 6, and I'll explain how in just a second. But just to remind you what those conjugations are. I have, yo tengo. You have, tú tienes. He or she has. Él tiene or ella tiene. Or usted tiene, you formal. We have, nosotros tenemos, or nosotras tenemos, if it's all females. And they have, ellos or ellas tienen, and you all have, ustedes tienen. So again, this should be just a refresher on that tener verb. We talked about this a few weeks ago when we're talking about chapter 3 over there. And now we can go ahead and begin with our activity 6. Like I said, I'll explain this in just a second. I'll talk about the verbo salir in just a second. So actividad 6 says the following. ¿Quién lo dice? Who says it? Muchos dicen que Oaxaca, you remember this is the state we're talking about, the Mexican state, Oaxaca. Muchos dicen que Oaxaca tiene mucho de interés. ¿Quién lo dice? So it says, many say that. Remember that word que? Dicen is a form of they. That's the they a conjugation, that en ending. That. Remember that que means they say that. Oaxaca has, there's that tener form there. Oaxaca has many or much, not much interest, but many things of interest, many points of interest. ¿Quién lo dice? Who says what? So let's see who says those things about Oaxaca. So in the model, you're going to have the subject pronoun, or the subject, in this case is yo. You're going to have the place, la ciudad, the city, again, this is vocabulary review, en calles bonitas, a noun, beautiful streets or beautiful avenues in this case. So now they're giving you the information that you are going to need to complete a sentence here. So you have your subject pronoun yo. Remember, we're saying that that person is saying something. So I have to use a form of that verbo decir, right? And that is when your conjugation comes in handy. So you might want to keep those notes handy in your notebook. You may have to come back and look at these, okay? So in the yo form, since I'm talking about myself here, I'm going to say digo, right? So yo digo que, don't forget that que in there, because you're saying I say that. One second, my computer locked me out and I have to see what I'm recording here. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I say that. Again, there's that piece of information. La ciudad. I say that the city. Here's something I have to add now. Tiene. It has what? What does it have, right? So I have to put a form of tener. Has calles bonitas. Beautiful streets or pretty streets. And it does. It's true. Those avenues in Mexican cities are beautiful, beautiful. So again, here's the information that they gave you. Yo, la ciudad en calles bonitas. It is our job to plug in the correct form of decir plus que, because you're saying that, something that, and then a form of tener, depending on what my object here is, the subject here. So let's look at número uno. We'll do number 1 together. And like we've done in the past, I'll have you guys pause and work on 2 through 5 in class together. Okay? So this is the information that I have. I have Carlos. So think about what subject pronoun could I use to replace Carlos? Well, Carlos is a singular person, right? One person. And I'm talking about him, right? I'm not Carlos, so it can't be yo. I'm not talking to Carlos, so it can't be tú. I'm talking about Carlos. So it's going to have to be third person. Él, ella, or usted. Well, Carlos is a masculine. He's a male. So I will use the masculine form. Él. So now I know that I'm going to have to use a verbo dice. Right? Carlos dice. So I have Carlos is my subject. So número uno, I'm going to go ahead and begin my sentence. Carlos is the subject. That's how I'm going to begin my sentence. Remember to look back at the model. That's why they have an example. Just follow that. Now I have to put a form of decir. Carlos says that. That's where my verbo comes in. So again, I looked at my chart here. I'm talking about él. He says something. So dice. I would have to say dice. So Carlos dice. And then that's where I have to put that que there. Carlos says that. Don't forget that que in there, por favor. Now, you won't always use that que after dice. Okay? But in a lot of instances, we will. Just think about it in English. If you say, Mr. Martin says that, we did a great job, whatever it may be, right? If I use that in English after the verb say, then I would use que in Spanish after the verb decir. Okay? So think of it that way. If it helps you kind of translate that in your head to English, do that. So Carlos dice que las iglesias, there's my other piece of information. So Carlos dice que las iglesias, what comes next? I have to use a form of tener. Well, I'm talking about las iglesias. That's third person, plural. It's the plural form. I'm talking about las iglesias, but it's more than one. So if I look at my chart here, I'm going to have to use the plural form of tener. Tienen, right? So Carlos dice que las iglesias tienen Oops, excuse me, that's blurry. There you go. Tienen arte regional, regional art. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of squeeze this in here so I don't have to go use my other line. Arte regional. Okay, so my complete sentence will be, Carlos dice que las iglesias tienen arte regional. So here I have my first piece of information. Carlos, and you don't have to add this. I'm just kind of adding this as a teacher, right? Says that, Carlos says that, dice que las iglesias tienen, have. And I have to use the have or tienen form because I'm talking about las iglesias. Dice goes along with Carlos, so I have to use the third person singular form of decir. But tienen goes with the place that I'm talking about, las iglesias. So because it's third person plural, I have to use tienen. So again, that's why this is going to be very handy to use. Okay? So muchachos, go ahead and complete numbers 2 through 5. The remainder of those questions in your notebook. And again, pay attention to the subject or subject pronoun. Plug in a form of the verbo decir that matches that subject pronoun. For example, here I'm talking about plural again. Not singular, but plural. So you're going to have to look at another side of your chart. You're going to have to look at the plural side of your chart. So what form of the verb will I have to put there? Okay? And then also look at, whenever it's time to plug in that tener form, look at the object there, el zócalo. That is a place, singular. And I'm talking about it. Okay? So it'll have to be tiene or tienen. So just follow that example. Do the same with the rest of these. And again, just pause right now, complete 2 through 5, and come back when you are finished. All right, muchachos, so if you're back, that means you completed activity 6. Remember, if you guys had trouble with this for any reason, please message me. If there's a certain question that you have particular to this activity, please message me at any time. You can even message me now. Pause the video. Message me right now. What is your question? I don't understand this. And I can definitely work on maybe giving you another video or sending some information to help make that a little bit more clear for you. So, actividad 7. Now we're going to look at a different verb. But the good thing about this is that it follows that same decir format, the same decir conjugation rules. Okay? That verbo es el verbo salir. Okay? Salir. We're on the same page, by the way, I'm sorry. 254, just activity 7, right next to it. So in this activity, we want to talk about going somewhere or leaving or going out somewhere. So Rosa y Sofía ven a muchas personas. Rosa and Sofía see a lot of people. ¿De dónde salen todos? Usa la forma correcta de salir. So here I'm asking, from where are they all leaving? Or where are they all coming out from? Use the correct form of salir. Okay? So salir means to leave or to go out. Salir means to leave or to go out. It has an irregular yo form, salgo. Its other forms are regular. That should sound familiar. That's just like the verbo decir, right? In the yo form, it's irregular because it has that go ending. And in the other forms, we use the same endings, es, e, imos, en. So let's look now. You noticed at the beginning of the lesson, I had these little notes up here next to my title. I have the verbo salir, which is what I'm going to be using. Again, it means to leave or to go out. Notice, just like decir, it's an IR verb, meaning it ends in IR. Simply what it means. So when I remove that IR, I'm left with this stem. Remember, the stem is what is left of the word when I remove that ending. So that's what I'm going to be adding my ending to. Sal, 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 sal. That's my stem. Just like the endings in decir, go, es, imos, en. Same endings for salir. Go, es, imos, en. So to say I leave or I go out, yo salgo. You leave or go out, tú sales. He leaves or goes out, él sale. Or ella or usted, right, with the same verb. We leave or go out, nosotros salimos. And they leave or go out, ellos salen. Or you all leave and go out, ustedes salen. So the only thing that's going to be changing a little bit from here from the decir verb is the stem. So decir, follow these conjugations. Salir, follow the same ending conjugation endings. Okay? So let's look at actividad 7. Pretty similar here. We're going to have to use the correct form of salir in this case by looking at our subject or subject pronouns. So el número 1, Rosa y Sofía blank del café. I have to use one of these forms of el verbo salir to go in that blank. Well, I have to look at my subject pronoun, or in this case a subject, Rosa y Sofía. I have to ask myself first, is that singular or plural? Right? To know whether I'm looking at the singular side of my chart or the plural side. Well, I know that when it says y, that means and, then that's going to be plural. I'm talking about two people here. Rosa y Sofía. Rosa and Sofía. So I'm going to look at my plural side, right? It's either going to be salimos or sales. Well, I know it can't be salimos because salimos is for nosotros salimos. Whenever it's nosotros, I have to see a yo, right? If it said Rosa y yo, or Sofía y yo, I'm including myself, right, in that plural group, then it would be salimos. But I'm not including myself. I'm just talking about Rosa y Sofía. I'm not there. So it can't be salimos, it's going to have to be salen. So Sofía y Rosa salen del café. Where do they come out or where do they leave from? Remember, this is vocabulary. What place is that, muchachos? Café is the cafe or the coffee shop. Again, that's a little bit of vocab review there. So again, you're going to find this in the attachments below a Google document. I'll just kind of transfer this information to that so you guys can just simply type in the correct form of salir in there. Make sure to look at your subject or subject pronouns there. That's going to be your biggest hint as to what form of salir I should use. Okay? And again, use your little chart there. And that would be the completion of today's lesson, muchachos. Remember, if you guys have a little bit of extra time at the end of class, I do encourage you to always log into Quizlet. Okay? That vocabulary, that ongoing practice will really help you guys. So any little time that you have in class, please log into Quizlet. There's plenty of activities and games for you guys to practice with there. And you're going to find that when it's time for that test or a vocab quiz or whatever it may be, you guys are much more familiar with it. And I wish I could, sit here and teach vocabulary for 5 days, but, we kind of have a certain pace we have to follow here. So if there's any questions about it, definitely let me know. But other than that, go ahead and be practicing with Quizlet whenever we have a little bit of extra time. Okay? All right, muchachos, that's the lesson for today. Go ahead and, like I said, log into your Google Classroom, complete Actividad 7, and I will grade those for a Google Classroom grade. Okay? You guys have a great rest of the day. I'll see you guys soon. Hasta luego.